I got one from when I was stationed in bumfuck nowhere outside Baghdad. B-19. Escorting intel geeks and their goofy surveillance truck. Is truck with camera tower with thermal and night optics. Chilling, Copenhagen and crappy energy drinks, scoping stuff with the optics late night. People crapping. Some raghead beating a goat. What the heck? See screwed up looking mutant body thermal outline. Intel SBC is unimpressed, probably a system malfunction. SBC switches between black hot / white hot a few times. Okay, what the heck is that? Human shape. Long ass arms, too long. Screwed up crippled legs. Way it moves makes my skin crawl. Grab LT sleeping near truck. Let's go shoot this freaking demon, sir. It's probably some disabled Iraqi, fucked up in a blast. Spent weeks after that talking and trying to look for that thing. Shortly after we left the FOB and moved back to the city though, so I still have no idea what the heck it was. We did figure out that where we lost visual on the thermals was in a canal that was full of garbage and sewage.
This is the tale of two boys in the woods. It's not my own tale, but it's a true tale. Some would say, no. Not true, that's not how it happened, but it's how the other guy, the one who lived, explained it. They had been visiting a small place in Norway, about 350 people lived there at the time. I lived there. They were city boys, wanted to see the country, the woods, and enjoy a bit of beer and women. At one point a third guy had joined them in their endeavor to enjoy themselves. Later it was told that none of them knew who he was or where he'd come from, just that it felt right to have him there, like they had been missing a piece of a puzzle and that the guy was that piece. Let us call the two friends Geir and John, and the third guy who no one remembers even seeing anymore for Seb. John began feeling ill one night. He told Geir that Seb was acting all weird and that he felt sick being near him. Geir laughed it off, but John became more reclusive and apparently refused to have Seb there anymore. Geir and John fought that day, and Geir told John to stay in the cabin and be sick all he wanted, because Geir was heading out to drink. However, while Geir was drinking, John joined him. It was about 27 below Celsius, Americans, and icy that day. John explained he didn't want to sit at home, that he was sorry for his behavior. When they left, John didn't get his jacket back, claiming he was fine without it. Now this is where it gets a bit tricky. You see, Geir swore John came home with him, that they shared a meal, and that John told Geir that Seb had left. Geir thought nothing of it until he was woken by a knocking at the cabin door. It was the cops telling him that John had been found floating under the ice under the bridge, and that his clothing had been found neatly folded in a crossing by a taxi driver, his shoes on top. Apparently John had been dead for about 12 hours, while Geir knew he had spent time with John within that time range and told the police so. The police figured he was in shock, denial, that sort of thing. But Geir was adamant. There were 2 plates on the table, and John's bed had been slept in. But when Geir told them about Seb, they became very serious and began asking questions about Seb, how he spoke, how he walked and talked, that sort of thing. Geir willingly explained everything about Seb, and was carted off to the mental hospital, charged for murder but apparently too sick to stand trial. If I think back to that night, it snowed heavily. And the taxi driver found the clothing free of snow, neatly folded. If John died that early, there is no way those clothes wouldn't be covered with snow and impossible to see. So, what's your guess? A skinwalker seemingly gliding into their friendship seamlessly? Or just schizophrenia? Used to live in the middle of the woods in Oregon with my uncle and his family. Went to visit them in the summer a few years ago. Driving a 4-wheeler on some old logging roads in the middle of nowhere. Carrying a G23 because of mountain lions and shit. Know the woods pretty well because I had lived there for a bit. Hop off and go exploring near a stream in the woods. Come across an old, dilapidated cabin. Decide to explore it. Before I go in, I look around back to see if there's anything cool. There's a Ford Bronco and a Subaru station wagon parked. Based on the condition of the cabin, they obviously didn't belong there. Look in the windows, there's a USP sitting in the seat of the Subaru. Consider stealing it, but decide it would be a dick move. Hear people approaching. 5 to 6 guys are coming out of the woods with axe and SKSs. Nope.jpg. They hadn't seen me, so I start sneaking away back to my ATV. Someone yells, "Hey. Shit 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 shit. Run the fuck away." ATV starts on the first try. Go back home, never mentioned it to anyone. The land I was on belonged to a logging company, so there shouldn't be anyone living on it. I don't know what was going on.
Almost everyone gets those small, painful bumps on their tongue. But do you know what they really are? Small parasites latch onto your taste buds when you ingest some milk products that haven't been properly sterilized. These parasites burrow deep between the taste reception cells and lie dormant for months. After feeding off your food before your body even gets a chance at it, they begin to reproduce. The growing number of parasites causes your taste bud to swell, turn white, and become extremely painful as the opening at the top closes and your new friends have to eat something. Once they have eroded enough of the taste bud to escape, most will squirm their way towards your digestive tract. They are essentially looking for your mammary glands, and since most of you wouldn't have them anyway, the parasites live the rest of their lives in your lower digestive tract. In the slim chance that they head north instead of moving towards your intestines, the parasites will find their way to your meninges. The human body has no defense against this kind of parasite, as it is usually found in other larger mammals, and therefore they are able to pass through the meninges easily. Slowly, they poke holes in the membranes until they have reached their destination, your brain. Acting much like certain nematodes, they start to eat away small areas of your temporal lobe. First, you'll hear things that don't exist. Footsteps in the hall behind you. Someone outside. The false sounds are small at first, usually derived from an existing noise your body cannot identify, as small holes make it harder for your brain to process incoming information. True to the nature of the human brain, it will begin filling in the gaps with whatever makes sense to it. As the days go on, more gaps are made. Generally, after 5 to 7 days of infection, the parasites will reach your optical lobe in search of the rich capillaries that are located towards the back of your brain. Only the fresh-hatched children of the first parasites will make it here. The same destruction takes place, and now hallucinations will accompany the strange sounds, and in some cases, smells. Your gray matter is not enough to sustain these intruders, and will therefore slowly kill them. The worst part is they won't live long enough to finish the job. The first sign of entry to the brain will be small amounts of clear fluid running from the nose. This fluid is different from mucus and will not be gooey or sticky, but more water-like. This is your cerebral spinal fluid leaking from the penetrations the parasites caused. They burrow in clusters, making small holes that eventually will rip due to stress from the fluid pulsating. You may also notice a metallic taste in your mouth, headache, nausea, and or vertigo. There is no cure. The only hope you have is that the parasites perish before they are able to do any serious damage.
I've always been very close to plants, the way they smell, the bright colors they give when you raise them well. I've seen many different ways that people have tried to make a garden grow. I've tried a few myself. The one I have based my gardening over is talking to plants, many different studies and different results, but my method always seems to just give them that extra bit of life. You see, when I caught the neighbor's child sneaking in my greenhouse, I was very angry, and the child was very scared. His screams seemed to shake every pane of glass, but nothing as much as a whisper escaped, and my plants were grateful. The child made them grow for me, and his flesh made the most excellent fertilizer. I tell you this in good knowing that only now you and my pants now know my secret. Now would you please scream for them? They have been in need for so long.
Featherdale, Ohio had a rude awakening last night when a meteor the size of a small car fell onto the football field of their local high school. The football field's a mess, a small fire broke out, and the neighbors of the school probably had quite a scare when they heard the crash, but all in all, that would have been the end of the story if it hadn't been for what the responding firefighters found in that space rock. Jason DiGagio, the firefighter who made the discovery, had this to say: I couldn't believe it. Heck, when we got the fire under control I thought it'd be funny to reach my hand in, and right when I felt this soft lump I was like, should he laughs. I was trying to scare my friends, but I ended up scaring myself more than I've ever been scared. So what exactly did he find inside that asteroid? It was small and coated in a sticky layer of goo. The cops hadn't arrived yet by that time, so our chief got on the radio and explained the situation to them, and they thought it was a practical joke. He laughed again. But it was no joke. Blair County Community Hospital currently has the creature and is doing their best to keep it stable until the CDC pick it up early tomorrow morning. As of writing this, it is still alive, but doctors and officials representing the CDC are skeptical of transporting it to their headquarters in Fairbanks, Oregon, until they're certain what is being dubbed the Featherdale visitor will survive the journey. Barack Obama is expected to issue a statement tomorrow on how this affects America and the global community. We will provide updates if anything develops throughout the night. Wikipedia link on the event.
There was a girl who had an illness and was bedridden for the majority of her life. She was recently diagnosed to die within the next couple of months, so her parents decided to spend as much time with her as they could before her time came. They decided that the best thing was to go camping at a local site for a little bit, since the daughter was stuck in the hospital for so long. On their way there, the girl was quiet as usual and laid in the back while the parents talked amongst themselves. When they finally reached their destination, they pitched the tent, unpacked everything and started a campfire. The mother was constantly filming the area and her daughter while the father went out for more firewood. It was getting dark when he came back, but he suddenly heard the mother scream, so he rushed over to discover that his daughter was standing on her feet and was doing a wild, erratic dance before she suddenly dropped dead. After all the funeral processions and grieving subsided, the parents wanted to see the video the mother recorded on that very night. They put the tape in the player and began to watch. At first it just showed the mother looking at the scenery and random animals that passed by in the distance, but as the time frame skipped, it jumped to when she was inside the tent with the daughter as she stood up and began to jerk around. But there was something wrong. It first was in the corner of their eyes, but as they replayed the scene, their horror became more and more real. The entire time the daughter was dancing, there was a ghastly white hand latched onto the top of her head.
You try to sleep, but the noises keep you awake. It's like something's scratching on wood and growling. You tell yourself it's only the wind, and only the trees outside, but the sound goes on. And on. And on. Finally, you just can't take it. You stand up, turning the lights on. The sound is coming from your front door. You walk into the living room on unsteady legs, and the growling gets louder, the scraping more pronounced, more vicious. With shaking hands, you reach for the telephone and the noises stopped. Like they never were there. For what feels like hours, you stand there with the phone in your hand, waiting for the sounds to begin again. They never do. Finally, heart in your throat, unable to stop yourself, you walk to the door. You open it on the night air. Nothing. You study the door. It should be almost clawed to pieces. You could have swore you heard the wood start to give. But it's unmarked. You shake your head. Just your imagination. Then you close the door. The claw marks are on the inside. Many years ago I was on what is called a meet and turn. This is where a driver that is domiciled out of one city will drive a load halfway to its destination, while a driver domiciled out of that destination will drive halfway with a load that is destined for my city. We meet in a parking lot, switch trailers, and drive back home. I had been on this run for a few months and found that I always got to the meet point about an hour before the other driver. It was a dark and empty dirt lot at about 3 a.m., so I would stretch out across the seat and take a short nap. One night, about 10 minutes into my nap, I was awoken by a barking dog. I tried to ignore it, but it carried on for several minutes and got louder as the dog got closer. Soon, it became apparent that the dog was right outside of my truck barking at me. Okay, either this dog is Lassie and is trying to alert me to something, or else he is just a pain in the ass and I will need to throw something at him to scare him off. It is important to note that the barking had been going on for a good 10 minutes at this point. So, I sat up and looked out my window. Standing there, mere inches on the other side of the glass, was a man of about 35. He was a large fellow, and was barking at me. His eyes were crazy and he was frothing at the mouth a little. The scene really held my full attention for a moment. The sheer creepiness of this struck me. Gently, and making an absolute minimum of sudden movements, I reached down and started my truck and slowly pulled away. He chased me, much like you might expect an angry dog to do, barking all the while I drove for 2 minutes, and he still sounded like he's running right behind me. That's when I realized he was on the fucking truck.